Have you ever felt like no matter how much compost or manure you spread, your soil still feels heavy, tired, and somehow lifeless? You're not alone. Many of us who've gardened for decades know that quiet disappointment all too well when we pour time, energy, and even hope into our soil. But by spring, it just doesn't bounce back the way it used to. Well, my friends, this November, I want to share something that might just change the way you think about feeding your garden forever. It's time to stop relying on manure. Yes, you heard that right. Stop using it. Not because manure is bad, but because there's a smarter, cleaner, and more natural way to rebuild your soil that works quietly through winter and rewards you threefold by spring. You see, November is one of those quiet months when most gardeners hang up their gloves and wait for spring to come. But for those of us who understand the rhythm of nature, November is not the end of gardening. It's the secret beginning of next season's success. What you do in your soil now determines whether your next harvest will struggle or thrive. And here's the good news. You don't need expensive products, synthetic fertilizers, or even a trip to the garden center. Everything you need to triple your harvest naturally is already right around you, free or nearly free, waiting to be used in a smarter way. So grab your cup of tea, take a deep breath of that crisp November air, and let's rebuild your soil the way nature intended, quietly, slowly, and powerfully. Part 1. Understanding November soil. When we think of November, we picture falling leaves, chilly mornings, and gardens fading into rest. But beneath the surface, something remarkable is still happening. Even as frost dusts the ground, the soil is alive. Tiny microbes are still busy digesting organic matter, earthworms are tunneling deeper to stay warm, and roots from your late-season plants are slowly releasing nutrients back into the ground. This is what I like to call the invisible season of healing for the soil. The earth may look quiet on top, but underground it's preparing for rebirth. And that's exactly why November is the most important month of the year to feed your soil. Not with raw manure, but with the right kind of organic matter that nourishes life instead of shocking it. Manure, even when composted, can carry too much ammonia and salts. When the weather is cool and damp, those elements can linger and harm delicate microbes that should be thriving. And if you live in a region with freezing winters, manure often clumps together, blocking oxygen from reaching the roots and suffocating the life beneath the surface. What the soil really craves now is balance, gentle nutrition that doesn't burn or overwhelm it. Think of your garden like a tired body after a long workout. It doesn't need a heavy meal. It needs something light, restorative, and full of quiet energy. In November, your job isn't to dump more fuel into the soil. It's to nurture the living network that keeps it breathing. The fungi, the worms, the microscopic bacteria, all of them depend on the steady warmth and moisture of autumn to rebuild the structure that was lost during summer's heavy growth. If you feed them right now with natural, low-stress nutrients, you set the stage for spring soil that feels soft, smells sweet, and crumbles like chocolate cake in your hands. That's what we're after. That's the kind of soil that grows flavor, beauty, and peace of mind. Part 2. Step 1. The foundation, carbon magic. So where do we begin? It starts with the most abundant resource November offers, fallen leaves. Instead of bagging them up or watching the wind carry them away, see them for what they truly are. Nature's finest mulch and your soil's best winter medicine. Gather dry leaves from your yard, oak, maple, ash, whatever you can find. And if possible, run them over with a mower or shredder to break them down. When you spread a thick layer, about 4 inches deep, over your garden bed, something amazing happens. You're not just covering the soil, you're insulating it, protecting it from temperature swings while trapping moisture and oxygen underneath. These leaves begin a slow transformation through the months ahead. As the frost and snow come and go, they break down into what gardeners call leaf mold, a dark, crumbly substance that's rich in carbon and beneficial fungi. Leaf mold improves soil texture, increases water retention, and supports the microbial life that keeps your soil alive all winter long. But here's a little trick many experienced gardeners swear by. Before you lay down the leaves, sprinkle a thin layer of rice bran or finely ground oats between them. This feeds the fungi that turn those leaves into humus faster. You'll notice after a few weeks fine white threads forming between the layers. That's mycelium, the living fabric of your soil's immune system. It's what connects every bit of organic matter, helping nutrients flow like blood through a body. If you've ever walked through a forest after rain and smelled that rich, earthy scent, that's the smell of fungal life at work. And you can have that same living energy right in your garden beds by spring. And don't worry if you live somewhere cold or snowy. Even under frost, decomposition continues. Slowly, quietly. The leaves protect the soil, the microbes keep nibbling away, and by the time the first thaw arrives, you'll have the perfect foundation for strong root systems. So this November, resist the urge to leave your soil bare or cover it with manure. Instead, give it a blanket of leaves, a sprinkle of carbon-rich goodness, and the chance to breathe. Because what you're really doing isn't just feeding soil, you're building life from the ground up. Part 3. Step 2. The mineral boost. Now that your soil has its protective blanket of leaves, it's time to give it a deep mineral recharge. Think of this as the vitamins your soil craves after a long, exhausting growing season. During the summer months, your plants pull out not only nitrogen and phosphorus, but also tiny trace minerals that are just as important. Magnesium for chlorophyll, zinc for enzyme activity, and boron for flower and fruit development. By November, those minerals are nearly gone. And if you don't replace them, your soil will start the new season depleted and tired. You don't need store-bought fertilizers to fix this. Instead, reach for what you already have around the home. One of the simplest and most effective mineral boosters is a mixture of wood ash, crushed eggshells, and a handful of natural rock dust, if you can find it at your local garden center. Wood ash from clean, untreated firewood is rich in potassium and calcium, two nutrients that help strengthen plant cell walls and protect them from frost damage. Eggshells add calcium carbonate that slowly balances the soil's acidity, keeping it friendly for both plants and earthworms. And rock dust, which comes from volcanic stone, reintroduces more than 60 trace minerals that modern soil often lacks. Sprinkle this mixture lightly over your leaf layer. Just a thin dusting, like powdered sugar on a cake, and rake it in gently. You don't need to bury it. Rain and melting snow will carry these minerals down into the soil naturally. As winter moisture seeps through, these elements will settle deep into the earth, waiting patiently for spring roots to wake up and draw them in. When you treat your soil this way, you're not forcing growth, you're restoring balance. And balance is what keeps a garden healthy year after year. Part 4. Step 3. The living liquid, microbial tea. If you've ever made a cup of herbal tea to soothe yourself after a long day, you'll understand why your soil deserves one too. Microbial tea is exactly that. A living tonic for the earth, filled with beneficial bacteria and fungi that bring tired soil back to life. It's gentle, safe, and incredibly effective. To make it, fill a bucket halfway with finished compost or crumbly leaf mold, the good earthy stuff that smells like the forest after rain. Add about a cup of unsulfured molasses or brown sugar to feed the microbes, then top it off with clean, non-chlorinated water. If you have rainwater saved, even better. Stir it for a minute or two each day, and after about 3 to 5 days, you'll notice a rich, earthy aroma. That means it's alive and ready to use. Pour this tea evenly over your leaf and mineral layers until the soil is moist but not drenched. What happens next is almost magical. Those beneficial microbes begin to multiply, feeding on the carbon from the leaves and the minerals you've added. They build tiny highways through the soil, improving structure, oxygen flow, and nutrient exchange. Even in cool November weather, these microscopic workers stay active, slowly preparing your garden for a spring explosion of growth. And here's the beauty of it. You can use the same method in raised beds, containers, or even small patio pots. It's a gentle system that scales perfectly, no matter the size of your garden. By nurturing your soil with life instead of chemicals, you're setting up a self-sustaining ecosystem that does most of the work for you. Part 5. Step 4. The sea's secret, kelp and seaweed mix. Now let's add one final natural boost, something so powerful and yet so simple that many gardeners overlook it. Seaweed. Often called the ocean's compost, seaweed is a miracle material for the November garden. It's loaded with more than 60 trace elements, natural enzymes, and plant growth hormones like cytokinin and gibberellin, which encourage roots to grow stronger and deeper. If you live near the coast, you can collect washed-up seaweed after a storm. Just make sure to rinse it well in fresh water to remove excess salt. If you don't live near the ocean, don't worry. Dried kelp meal from garden suppliers works just as well. Spread about a handful of dried seaweed or a few strips of fresh chopped seaweed across your garden bed. Then gently mix it into the top layer of soil or leaf mulch. Over the winter, seaweed breaks down into a soft, jelly-like texture that helps your soil retain moisture while improving aeration. It's especially valuable for older gardeners because it reduces the need for constant watering and fertilizing later on. Seaweed also contains compounds that strengthen plants' immune systems, helping them resist diseases and pests naturally. By spring, when you dig your fingers into the earth, you'll find it feels moist, rich, and alive. Exactly the kind of soil that welcomes seeds and transplants with open arms. What's truly remarkable is how all these natural layers, leaves, minerals, microbes, and seaweed work together in harmony. There's no odor, no mess, and no waste. Instead of dumping nutrients all at once like manure does, this November soil trick builds life gradually, patiently, and beautifully, just as nature designed it. So as the days grow shorter and the nights turn colder, remember this: your garden isn't finished. It's just beginning a quieter, deeper chapter. While the world above sleeps, the life below is waking up, rebuilding itself for the next season of abundance. And by giving your soil this simple November gift, you're setting the stage for a harvest next spring that's not just bigger, but better in every way. Healthier plants, richer flavors, and a more peaceful garden to enjoy. Part 6. Step 5. The overwinter blanket, compost mulch. Now that your soil has been enriched with leaves, minerals, microbes, and seaweed, it's time to tuck it in for winter. This step is what I like to call the overwinter blanket. Think of it as wrapping your soil in a warm quilt that keeps it comfortable, protected, and alive during the cold months ahead. In November, the nights grow longer and the frost begins to bite. Exposed soil loses moisture fast and becomes compacted under the weight of rain or snow. That's why covering it properly makes all the difference. The best material for this is compost. Either your own or well-aged store-bought compost that smells sweet and earthy. Spread a layer about 2 inches thick over your garden beds, right on top of the layers you've built so far. This layer does more than just sit there. It breathes. It regulates soil temperature, prevents erosion, and gives beneficial microbes a safe home where they can continue working throughout winter. If you live in a particularly cold region, you can add an extra inch of straw or shredded bark on top. This combination insulates the soil perfectly and keeps moisture balanced even under snow. Here's a little secret many seasoned gardeners use. Before you lay down the mulch, sprinkle a touch of powdered cinnamon or a small amount of crushed neem leaf. These natural ingredients help keep mold, gnats, and winter pests away. No chemicals, no harm, just the subtle protection that nature provides. By the time the snow melts and spring returns, you'll notice something extraordinary. Beneath that compost blanket, the earth will feel soft, moist, and full of life. You'll find worms wriggling everywhere, breaking down the last of the leaf mold and pulling nutrients deeper into the soil. That's when you know your soil is truly alive. Part 7. Step 6. Optional boost. Rice water ferment. Now let me share one of my favorite winter secrets. A simple, ancient technique that's been used in Asian gardens for centuries. Fermented rice water. It's easy, natural, and surprisingly powerful. Whenever you rinse rice before cooking, don't pour that cloudy water down the drain. That milky liquid is full of starch, vitamins, and trace minerals, exactly what your soil microbes love to eat. Pour it into a glass jar or plastic container, cover it loosely with a lid, and leave it at room temperature for 2 or 3 days. You'll notice it begin to ferment. It may smell slightly tangy, almost like yogurt. That means it's ready. Once fermented, dilute 1 cup of this rice water into a gallon of clean water and pour it gently over your compost mulch. What happens next is subtle but remarkable. The starches in the rice water become food for beneficial bacteria that stimulate soil life. These microbes start multiplying, even in cool temperatures, accelerating the breakdown of organic matter and helping roots absorb nutrients more efficiently. Once spring arrives, this gentle probiotic solution also suppresses harmful microbes that cause rot or disease. It's a small step with big results, and it costs nothing. You can repeat it once or twice over the winter whenever you have leftover rice water. It's one of those quiet rituals that keeps your soil humming with activity while the rest of the world sleeps. And there's something deeply satisfying about it too, knowing that something as simple as the water from your kitchen can nurture life underground for months to come. Gardening, after all, is about noticing the connections between small actions and great results. Part 8. Let nature work through winter. Here's where the magic truly begins, and where you can finally rest. After all the care you've given your garden, it's time to let nature take over. Don't turn the soil. Don't disturb the layers. Just let it be. Rain, frost, and snow will do the work for you. Every drop of water that seeps down carries nutrients from the surface to the roots. Every freeze and thaw loosens compacted soil, creating natural pockets of air. Every worm tunnel becomes a miniature irrigation channel, ensuring moisture and oxygen reach deep where they're needed most. It's incredible how much happens when you stop interfering. The fungi you encouraged with those leaves will spread like delicate lace beneath the surface, connecting roots and microbes into a living web. The minerals will settle into balance. The compost will release slow, steady nutrition. By late February or early March, your soil will already be transforming. Dark, crumbly, and fragrant, full of hidden energy waiting for warmth. If you visit your garden during winter, you might be tempted to worry, to wonder if it's really working. But trust me, it is. Gently lift a small corner of your mulch and you'll likely find life there. Threads of white mycelium, a few brave worms, maybe even a sprouting seed that mistook a warm spell for spring. That's proof that your soil is alive and well. By April, when you're ready to plant again, you'll feel the difference immediately. Your shovel will slide into the earth effortlessly. The soil will crumble between your fingers like rich chocolate cake, and your plants will grow faster, healthier, and stronger than they did the year before. All of this without turning the soil, without chemical fertilizers, and without a single scoop of manure. Just patience, observation, and the gentle rhythm of nature doing what it does best. So this November, once you've finished layering and watering your garden, take a moment to step back. Look at your beds resting quietly beneath their blankets of leaves and compost. Feel that sense of peace, knowing that even in stillness, your garden is alive and growing in ways you can't see. This is the beauty of gardening as we get older. It teaches us that not all progress comes from action. Sometimes it comes from trust. Trusting the earth, trusting the process, and trusting that when spring arrives, the soil you've so lovingly prepared will return that care to you threefold. Because in the end, gardening isn't just about plants. It's about connection. The quiet understanding between you and the soil, between time and patience, between giving and receiving. And November, more than any other month, is when that connection feels most alive. Part 9. Practical tips for senior gardeners. If you've made it this far, I hope you can already picture how peaceful and rewarding November gardening can be. But let's be honest, for many of us, the joy of gardening also comes with a few aches, a little stiffness, and maybe less energy than we had years ago. That's why it's so important to find ways to work smarter, not harder. The beauty of this November soil method is that it's perfectly suited for seniors. Low effort, gentle, and incredibly forgiving. You don't need to bend, dig, or lift heavy bags of manure. All you need are light, natural materials you can collect easily. Leaves, ashes, compost, and perhaps a little seaweed if you're lucky enough to find some. Even the act of sprinkling minerals or watering in microbial tea can be done slowly, mindfully, with a cup of tea resting nearby and a sense of calm in the cool autumn air. One great trick I've learned over the years is to use raised garden beds or tall containers whenever possible. They bring the soil up to a comfortable height and keep your back happy. You can even use waist-high barrels or old wooden boxes. As long as there's drainage, anything can become a little garden of life. If collecting leaves feels like too much work, keep it simple. Just spread a few handfuls of shredded leaves each time you walk by your garden. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nature never is. And remember, even small daily actions make a difference. One handful of leaves here, one cup of compost tea there, and before you know it, your soil will be transforming beneath your feet. Another gentle tip: use fabric grow bags for leaves. They're lightweight, easy to carry, and break the leaves down faster because air can flow through them. By the time spring arrives, you'll have ready-made leaf mold compost without any turning or lifting. And one last little secret: avoid tilling altogether. Every time we turn the soil, we destroy the fragile tunnels and networks that earthworms and microbes have worked so hard to build. Let them do the mixing for you. Over winter, frost will loosen everything naturally. So when the first warm days of March arrive, your soil will already be ready to plant. Gardening at our age doesn't have to be about endurance or pushing through pain. It can be about connection, mindfulness, and letting nature do most of the work. With this method, you'll find that your garden gives back far more than you put in. And that's exactly how it should be. Part 10. The science behind it. Now you might be wondering, how does all of this actually work? How can a few leaves, minerals, and microbes outperform manure or synthetic fertilizer? Well, it all comes down to biology, the quiet but powerful science happening beneath our feet. When we use manure, we're adding concentrated nutrients, mostly nitrogen, that flood the soil all at once. It's like feeding a patient who just came out of surgery a giant meal. The system becomes overloaded, and the soil life, those delicate microbes and fungi, get shocked. They either die off or go dormant, and your soil becomes dependent on constant feeding to survive. But the November layering method works differently. Each ingredient, carbon from leaves, calcium from ash and eggshells, trace minerals from rock dust, and beneficial microbes from compost tea, feeds a different part of the ecosystem. Instead of rushing nutrients, this approach builds soil structure and biodiversity. It's like rebuilding a city rather than delivering a truckload of groceries. The fungi and bacteria you encourage with these layers are the real architects of fertility. They bind soil particles together into small clumps called aggregates, which improve drainage and hold moisture at the same time. They also form symbiotic relationships with roots, exchanging nutrients in perfect balance. The more microbial life you nurture, the less you'll ever need to fertilize again. And here's something many people don't realize. Good soil doesn't just grow food. It also stores carbon, captures moisture from the air, and even regulates temperature. By building humus naturally, you're not only growing a healthier garden, you're helping the planet, one handful of soil at a time. This is the kind of gardening science that feels like magic, because it's invisible. You can't always see it happening, but you can feel it in the way the earth softens, the way your plants stand taller, and the way your garden starts to balance itself without constant effort. So the next time someone tells you manure is the key to great harvests, smile and remember that the real secret lies in living soil. Soil that breathes, heals, and gives back more than it takes. Part 11. The emotional side of gardening in November. November has a quiet beauty that many people overlook. The flowers fade, the air cools, and the days shorten. But in that stillness, there's something deeply comforting. For those of us who have spent a lifetime in the garden, this season holds a special kind of peace. It's not about growth anymore. It's about gratitude. There's something sacred about walking through your garden this time of year. The leaves crunch softly underfoot, the air smells earthy and calm, and the world feels like it's exhaling after a long summer. As you spread that final layer of compost or pour your last bucket of microbial tea, you realize you're not just feeding plants. You're returning something to the earth that has given you so much. For older gardeners, November offers a moment of reflection. Every handful of soil holds memories. The first tomato you grew decades ago, the smell of your grandmother's garden, the joy of watching something sprout from nothing. Working the soil now, slowly and intentionally, connects you to all those moments again. And there's comfort in knowing that while you rest this winter, your garden won't be idle. Beneath the frost, beneath that quiet blanket of mulch, life continues. Worms will wiggle, microbes will multiply, and roots will whisper quietly in the dark. You don't need to see it to believe it. You just need to trust it. That's the beautiful thing about gardening later in life. It reminds us that not all growth is visible. Sometimes the most meaningful progress happens below the surface. Just like us, the soil grows wiser with age. It learns to balance, to give, to rest, and to renew. So, as you finish your November soil work, take a moment to pause. Breathe in the cool air, look around your quiet garden, and remember that even now, even in stillness, the cycle of life continues. Steady, humble, and full of grace. Because gardening isn't just about what we harvest. It's about what we learn along the way. Patience, gratitude, and faith in the quiet miracles that happen when we simply give the earth a chance to heal. Part 12. The result by spring. When spring finally arrives, your patience will be rewarded in the most wonderful way. The first thing you'll notice as the snow melts, where the frost softens, is the smell. That sweet, deep, earthy fragrance that tells you the soil is alive again. Go ahead, kneel down, scoop a handful, and feel it between your fingers. It won't be heavy or clumpy like it used to be. It will crumble softly, rich and moist, like chocolate cake. That's the unmistakable sign of soil that has come back to life. When you start planting, you'll see the difference immediately. Seeds that used to struggle will sprout faster and stronger. Transplants will take root without shock, because the soil around them breathes. It holds water when needed but drains effortlessly after rain. You'll notice that plants stand taller, leaves are a deeper shade of green, and flowers bloom longer and brighter. Even the vegetables seem to taste better, fuller, as though the earth itself is adding its own quiet flavor. And what's truly remarkable is what you won't see. You won't find weeds invading as much, because the thick organic layer you built acts like a natural barrier. You won't have as many pests either, because healthy soil grows strong plants that resist disease on their own. You also won't be needing to buy fertilizers or chemical boosters, because your soil has become its own living pantry, stocked full of slow-release nutrients and teeming with life. It's in that moment, standing in your spring garden, watching new life burst from soil you nurtured months ago, that you'll realize this November method isn't just about gardening. It's about trust, rhythm, and letting nature do what it does best. You gave the soil time, and now it's giving back more than you ever expected. Part 13. A deeper understanding, the wisdom of natural gardening. There's something deeply humbling about realizing that the best gardener is not the one who works the hardest, but the one who listens the closest. Nature has her own language, and the soil speaks it quietly. Every layer you added back in November, the leaves, the minerals, the microbes, and the mulch, was part of that language. Together they created a living system that restores balance, harmony, and health. Modern gardening often teaches us to control nature, to measure, to fertilize, to fix problems with products. But when you take a step back, you see that nature never rushes. She builds slowly, season by season, and always in circles, not straight lines. What dies becomes food, what falls becomes protection, and what rests eventually blooms again. By following this November soil method, you're not just building fertile ground, you're aligning yourself with that timeless cycle. You're gardening the way forests do, with patience, diversity, and quiet confidence. You're creating soil that can take care of itself. That's the real secret. Once your soil is alive, it becomes self-sustaining. It holds water through drought, warms faster in spring, and even recovers from mistakes faster than before. This approach isn't about perfection, it's about observation. If your garden teaches you anything, let it be this. You don't have to force growth, you only have to make room for it. The soil knows what to do. It just needs your trust and a little help in November. And as you continue year after year, you'll notice your need for work gets smaller while your rewards get greater. Less watering, less weeding, more growing, more peace. It's the rhythm of nature working in your favor. Part 14. The legacy of living soil. For many of us, gardening has been a lifelong companion, through seasons of joy, loss, and change. And as we get older, it becomes more than a hobby. It becomes a way of staying connected to the earth, to our memories, and to something larger than ourselves. That's why this November soil method feels so meaningful. It isn't just about producing food or flowers, it's about leaving the land better than we found it. Imagine someone walking through your garden years from now, maybe a grandchild, a neighbor, or even a new homeowner. They'll dig into that same soil, and without realizing it, they'll touch the layers you built, the organic matter you fed, the life you nurtured. The soil will remember. It holds history in its humus just as surely as it holds moisture and seeds. Healthy soil is a gift that keeps on giving. It's the foundation of clean food, thriving plants, and resilient ecosystems. And it all begins with small acts of care. A handful of leaves, a sprinkle of ash, a cup of compost tea poured with love. You don't need big machines, fancy equipment, or chemicals to create abundance. You just need faith in the quiet intelligence of nature. So as another gardening year winds down, remember this. Your work in November isn't an ending. It's a promise. A promise that the soil will rest, renew, and return your care with gratitude when spring arrives. Every scoop of mulch, every drop of microbial tea, every layer you lay is part of that sacred exchange between gardener and ground. And when you see your first seedlings rise through that soft, rich soil in April, green, strong, and full of life, you'll smile, knowing that you didn't just grow a garden, you grew a legacy, because that's what the best gardeners do. They plant for tomorrow, nurture for life, and leave behind a little more beauty than they found. Part 15. Closing reflection. So as the days shorten and November's chill settles in, don't think of your garden as finished. Think of it as beginning again. Beneath the surface, in silence and strength, the earth doesn't need rushing. It needs rhythm. And when you honor that rhythm with patience, with care, with trust, your soil will reward you more generously than any fertilizer or manure ever could. Skip the manure this November. Instead, feed your soil with love, with leaves, with minerals and microbes, and then step back and let nature take over. When spring returns, you'll find not just a fertile garden, but a living, breathing world beneath your feet, one you helped heal and restore. And that, my friends, is the quiet miracle of gardening. The moment you realize that by caring for the earth, you're also caring for yourself. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to share it with someone who loves their garden as much as you do. Subscribe to Ivy Circle Gardeners for more practical, heartwarming, and natural ways to garden with joy, ease, and purpose. Because every season has its gift, and in November, the gift is simple: renewal. Let's make this the month we stop using manure and start growing with wisdom.